In this video, we're going to take a look at a turquoise ink that is very permanent, a part of the document series from Atramentis Turquoise. As always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a link to the turquoise playlist, so if you wanted to see more of them, you could find that there. I'm an ink guy, and let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, but we are seeing quite a bit of ghosting, even on Clairfontaine with the medium, the extra fine, and the stub. Now we have no feather, and I'm gonna say no spread because it's not spreading as compared to the others. It's that stub is thicker than the stub normally writes. That medium is thicker than the medium normally writes. So there is some spread that occurs, but it's fairly uniform. No halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine took 3 seconds to dry. The medium took 5. Scrubby for both is showing a tiny bit of color variation, but I'm not seeing it in the writing. And the smear test, I'm not sure you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a Nimicine Singularity with a fine nib is inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. We have no bleeding, but quite a bit of ghosting, but it is thin paper. We have no feather. Definite spread is occurring on the stub and the medium. The extra fine even looks a little thicker than normal, probably to a fine. We have no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine took 6 seconds to dry, while the medium took 9. Scrubby gives us no color variation. We're not getting it in the writing. And the smear test, you are definitely not recovering if you smear while you're writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we do see the outlining on that initial line that is common on your more permanent inks. It's underneath and above it. Now the rest is pushing its way up. And it is a true turquoise, as in it's one dye to do this. It's quite a blue-leaning turquoise, but that's not horrible in itself. The one on the right is let dry for 10 minutes, and in that 10 minutes it completely bonded with the paper, and it looks like it may not budge. It looks like it may be very resistant. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. Now, we actually get a lot of ink that has gone quite deep into the paper. It's never come through. It's not touching the page underneath, but there's a tremendous amount of dotting that's very deep, and there's a lot of ghosting, which I very rarely see on Tomoe River. We have no feather. The spread we've been seeing on the stub, on the medium, most noticeable, and because the extra fine goes to a fine, it's very manageable. We have no halo, no sheen. We do see a couple spots of shading going on in the extra fine, like the K in quick, the BR in brown, or lazy starts darker and works its way a bit lighter, but no shading shows up in the stub or medium. Extra fine took 4 seconds to dry, while the medium took 6. The scrubby for both give us no color variation, but we do see some spotting of it in the extra fine. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handles itself exactly the way you would expect, having seen the chromatography. There is no issue using this in a note-taking situation if you need to go back and highlight. And that's very obvious looking at the water. That had 0 effect. Pen flush, no effect. 1/3 bleach solution, no effect. This is a great permanent ink, not a bad color either. It did only take water to get it out of my pen. The next writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia paper. Now I do this not to see performance change, but more to see a tone change that goes for having yellow paper. I was actually very surprised by this. I expected that it was going to hold out being the very blue side of turquoise. It became the green side of turquoise here, which was a surprise for me with I thought it was going to be much more opaque. Not as opaque as I would have expected. Important to know that your writing might look much more green if you work on yellow paper in a professional environment. For the inks tested, the average viscosity is 2.5, and the realm of normal is 2.1 to 2.9. The Atramentis Document Turquoise has a viscosity of 2.72, so this is normal. If you're interested in how the viscosity test and all that's done, then down in the description is a link to that video. Now, let's take a look at life paper. Can we say that this is not performing very well in itself? There's a ton of spotting. It's entirely ghosted through because the ink makes it all the way in, not through the paper. None of this touches the back of, or the next page. But I do think that all of this will stop you from being able to use the back of the page. Now, we even get feathering here. We get quite a bit of feathering in the stub. Look, all the way through turquoise, it's all there. It has a ton of spread. The extra fine has feathering. Look at the K in quick. Look at the B in brown. Look at the word lazy. Tiny feathers all over it. The medium has feathering. All of quick, all of brown, all of it, all the way through tiny feathering. It spreads in all three of them. It has no halo, no sheen, no shade. 2 seconds to dry with the extra fine, 3 seconds to dry with the medium. Scrubby gives us no color variation. We're not getting it. We're just getting god-awful performance on this paper. But the smear test says you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. So there's that. For the inks tested, the average dry time is 17 seconds, and the realm of normal is 13 to 21 seconds. The Atramentis Document Turquoise has an average dry time of 6 seconds, so it's very fast drying. The last writing sample is done on Apica CD notebooks. Now, we're having that same troubled performance here. There's a lot of very deep bleed into the paper. Not through the paper, touching and corrupting the next page, but a lot in and a ton of ghosting as a result of it. Not an ink that I wind up very happy about. Well, we get no feathering on this one. We get a ton of spread in the stub. The extra fine becomes a fine. The medium becomes a little bit more than a broad. We have no halo, no sheen, no shade. We do get tone variation where the extra fine's a little lighter than the stub. The medium's darker than the stub. Extra fine took 2 seconds to dry while medium took 3. Scrubby for both gives us no color variation. We're really not getting it in the writing. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Instead of finding inks that look like the Atramentis Document Turquoise, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I decided to go with a magenta ink by Diamine, their Maroon. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of the Atramentis Document Turquoise? I find this has an overall spread in the writing. This fine is writing much more as a medium. That can be a problem. Combine that with its general aggressiveness into the paper, and I'm not particularly a fan. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? To tame the aggressiveness this ink has and try and gain some control over the spread by using the right pen. I think a dry, extra fine is the best way to go to get a hold of both its aggressiveness and its spread. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at Private Reserve's DC Super Show Violet.